Hello, dear viewers. Thank you for joining us. You're watching our weekly program, Talk to OBN, on your favorite media channel, OBN Horn of Africa. In this edition, we'll be talking about Ethio-Germany bilateral ties. And to discuss this matter, I am joining by His Excellency Dr. Ferdinand von Vahe, Charge Affairs of the Federal Republic of Germany to Ethiopia, Acting Ambassador of Germany to Ethiopia. Stay tuned. An Acting Ambassador, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for making it possible.
Well, Ambassador, to begin with, would you tell us a bit about your background, your diplomatic tenure, traveling in different countries?
With pleasure. I've been in Ethiopia now for 2 years, and before that I was posted to headquarters, that means to Berlin, in Germany, where I served for a couple of years, and before this I served in other missions abroad, in Bangladesh, in Bulgaria, and in Russia.
Well, what makes Germany unique and stand out globally?
Oh, this is quite a different question and definitely difficult for me to judge. I think when I ask my friends, which are not German, they would say Germany stands for vibrant culture, Autobahn, so highways, technique, universities that are free of charge. Germany stands for old history, old relationship with Ethiopia, football, so just to name a few.
Well, what has inspired you most about Ethiopia during your tenure here?
As I said, I've been here now for 2 years. And what I extremely like is traveling outside of Addis, because I think, and this is valid for all the missions I've been so far, that it is very important to get a feeling about the situation, the culture, but also the challenges which are outside of the capital. Because as in Germany, we are quite experienced that the capital is not everything. You know, we have strong provinces in our system in Germany. We have many big cities, and I know that it is important to see that people are living outside the city. So I love to travel the countryside. I love to see the cultural heritage. I love to taste the different cuisines that are in this country. I love to see the mountains as well as the desert. So it's really a fascinating and a very diverse country we have the chance to live in and to work for.
Well, Ambassador, how do you describe the current gesture of Ethio-Germany relation, diplomatically talking?
Well, you give me quite an easy one here, because this year we are celebrating 120 years of diplomatic relationship. Diplomatic relationship, which means that 120 years ago there has been a treaty formally subscribed to by Germany and Ethiopia. But I'm always, for me it's always very important to stress that diplomatic relation can be an umbrella, can be a framework, can be the official cadre in which we work, but in the end it is so much about the people filling in here. This can be cultural, this can be business, this can be intellectual exchange. And in this regard, it is very important to say that let's say, for example, academic exchanges between Germany and Ethiopia have been much older. Last year, we celebrated 400 years between the encounter between Hiob Ludolf and Abba Gregorius, so an Ethiopian priest and a German scholar, and jointly they wrote a history about Ethiopia or Abyssinia. They wrote a grammar about Ge'ez and about Amharic. So this was a very first encounter between German scientific community and Ethiopia.
The German embassy in Ethiopia has scored many years, and diplomatic ties has about 120 years old. And what are your top priorities for harnessing and enhancing partnership?
The embassy, the diplomatic work we are doing is always the framework for so many, in the end, people who fill in here. And as I was giving that example of academic exchange, but we also have, for example, a city cooperation between Leipzig and Addis Abeba. We have a German embassy school here in Addis Abeba where so many Ethiopian children go to and get German education, and they make a kind of bridge between the two countries, the two cultures even. And this year actually we are celebrating 70 years of this German school here in Addis Abeba, and there have been hundreds and thousands of students going through this school. We also see business interaction, and from the official side, let's put it like this, it is very important to note, and thus I come back to the 120 years of diplomatic relationship, that the first official visit to West Germany after the Second World War was by the Emperor Haile Selassie to West Germany.
Germany has got this humanitarian intervention in Ethiopia. You have this development agencies, we can mention GIZ and others. How is the participation of the German government in Ethiopian humanitarian activities?
Coming back to my background, where I served before in the Federal Foreign Office, we clearly distinguish between humanitarian assistance and development cooperation. In humanitarian assistance, we focus on the people that are in a dire situation, and where we, and it's never the German government alone, and it's never the German government acting itself, but it's always through the humanitarian system, which is the Red Cross, which is the international NGOs and local NGOs, and which is the UN system. And through these three pillars, as we call it, we and many others are ready to support people around the world, and if need, also in Ethiopia, in the field of humanitarian assistance. Separate from that, it is development cooperation. And development cooperation with Ethiopia has been going on now for decades. And as you mentioned, here again, the German government is not doing it by its own hands. We don't have enough hands for this, but we do it through our development agencies, which is the KfW Bank and, as you mentioned, the GIZ, which are implementing the support, the development cooperation we are giving. And here it's very important for me to stress that it is not a kind of donation. It is a cooperation between the government of Ethiopia and the government of Germany. We jointly agree on priorities where we want to support development in this country. And along these agreed lines, we are working on it.
How is Germany promoting partnership and cooperation with Ethiopia currently?
Well, we have touched upon a number of topics. We were just talking about development cooperation. I was mentioning the school, which is a stronghold of our cooperation and which is very much needed for a better, also future-driven support and bridge building between our two nations. We do also, and let me stress here, and coming back to Hiob Ludolf, we stress the academic exchange. You might be aware that only these days, like 2 weeks back, there was a huge conference on Ethiopian studies which took place in Havasa. And it was very exciting to see that there were so many Ethiopians, but also many foreigners. And this was already the 22nd edition of this international conference. And many of the predecessors have been in Germany, in Japan, in America, in Stockholm, so in various countries, which stresses the keen interest of international scholar society in Ethiopia and Ethiopian studies.
How does Germany support Ethiopia's economic reform efforts? Obviously, Ethiopia is undertaking a very massive reforms in a multitude of spheres.
It's indeed a very bold reform, and we can only applaud the Ethiopian government for these reforms, which were pushed forward, if I may say, especially like a year and a half ago. I think it is very important to continue on this path. It is in the end not the German government that can, and well, it's not a question of will, it's a question of possibility. It cannot fill in here. In the end, it is the private sector, and I'm very much optimistic that these reforms are going in the very right direction towards a more market-based economy and enabling a level playing field for international companies to come in, thus bringing in FDI, technology transfer, creating jobs and opportunities for so many people in Ethiopia, because what I experience here and what I hear from business is that they see a lot of opportunities once the, let's say, framework is well set, so to make it an easy approach for FDI to come in.
Well, how do you see the presence of Germany in the Horn of Africa, in the entire Horn of Africa, and the vitality of its presence in this region as well?
There's not a very strong footprint of Germany in East Africa when it comes to, let's say, many people from Germany living here. When we talk about the Horn, however we define the Horn, but there's a number of countries around, and there are not so many Germans living here, not so many business here. We have old established ties with so many countries in this region. We see the importance of the Horn also for Germany, and let me extend for Europe at large, because the Horn is on the border of a very important sea road to Europe, which is of vital interest for us.
Ethiopia is undertaking this national dialogue to bring lasting peace, and how your government view this positive initiative?
The national dialogue, I think, is a very good attempt to bring together people from all the country, from different backgrounds, to really contribute with their opinion and their grievances and their ideas and positive contributions to bring this country forward. I think it is quite a challenging exercise, because in the end you can start with so many town hall meetings and so many, let's say, community discussions, but in the end how to channel all this into a final, let's say, summary, declaration, agenda, whatever you call it, it is very difficult. And we'll see, as far as I'm informed, in March next year, there will be the final round of national dialogue. So it is an interesting opportunity for us also to observe how this national dialogue is going on.
Ethiopia has inaugurated this, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, one of the largest hydroelectric power project in Africa. And how do you again put your takeaway regarding this big project in connecting with trading electricity to the neighboring African nations?
Ethiopia is blessed by so much hydropower. And it's not only hydropower, as we all know, it's also solar power, it's wind power. And I do see that the production capacities are expanded beyond hydropower. So I see windmill farms, I see solar parks, and I think this is a very good approach, because our experience with greening the energy, if I may say so, and our conditions are much less favorable than here in Ethiopia, is that it is important to have different legs to stand on. So this is very crucial. I have come across traveling through the country by coincidence to some huge construction site of dams, and I was excited to see this huge construction site, which of course is always an interference into the flow of the water, into the ecosystem which is around this. So it needs a thorough checking and a robust scientific research on it. But we all need energy, this is sure. And if a country wants to develop, and we all want to develop, we need energy, and we need more energy for our first of all, I come to the question of exporting, but first and foremost for the own citizens, for the own industry, because I think exporting energy is like exporting raw materials. I think if you want to create jobs, it's much better to have more industry in their own country than exporting the energy or creating crypto mills which consume a lot of energy. As far as I was informed, there is really a huge potential, even more to be explored and to utilize in terms of hydropower. And I think this is something which is a great gift for Ethiopia and its economy, because with this green energy, if you want to call it like this, there is really the chance also to increase, let's say, the production of green products. So if with the hydropower energy you feed into factories, you can produce green steel or a garment or whatever it is. And this has clearly a market advantage over so many others, at least in Europe, which is quite a big market. And I do see that there's so much potential here that I was astonished to hear that there are plans for nuclear power plants, because our experience in Germany at least is that nuclear is quite a challenging source of energy.
Well, and not only this Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the country is also undertaking renewing, revamping the city and undertaking this corridor development, riverside projects and everything. How do you, analyze and put your insights on that area?
I've been living now here in the city for 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years, and I experienced this whole process of road development, corridor projects, and riverside projects. It's enormous. It's huge. It's very fast sometimes. Our neighborhood has changed dramatically. We have lost many neighbors who lived with us side by side before. When you travel around the city now, it's of course you have many green pockets now, parks, people are enjoying. There's a lot of construction going on, even beyond as far as I understand, beyond the river and beyond the corridor project. And I think this is really a very, very fast-growing city. Very impressive. For us, when we are not as fast, if I may say, as fast as you are here in Addis Ababa in construction, but when we do construction, and I do see, for example, when it comes to water piping and sewage water system, I see a lot of this construction as well, and I think this is very important. For us, it's always also a question of, connectivity in terms of bus lines, light train lines. I don't know whether Ethiopia, whether Addis Ababa is very prone for underground. In a city of that size in Germany, you would definitely have underground. But giving the shape of the city and the elevations, I don't know whether underground is appropriate. But definitely light trains, which we have a lot in Germany, and we are very, very supportive of.
What opportunities exist for engaging and empowering Ethiopia's youth through bilateral cooperation?
Youth is part of society and is an important factor of society. And we all know the demography in this country. I think when we talk about youth, and I think to a large extent it is about education. And it is about, let me add this, quality education. Because a formal education is important, but it is also important to have it in good quality. Because young people here around the world are today competing about or with their ideas, with their power, with their energy, and a country is really well advised to pay a lot of attention to the education of its youth, and then not to trap into this trap of well-educated but then no job. I think the creation of jobs is another very important point. And to my to my experience, and let's say I'm getting old, so I can talk about experience. We have experienced in Germany two different systems. One in the West with a free market system, people-driven, liberty-driven, and in the East a communist system with a government-led economy. And the clear result of this, let's say, comparison was that the market-driven economy has so many advantages over the government-led economy. And thus I do believe it is important to create the framework for industry, for companies. And I see so many, like, coming back to use, like offsprings and innovation centers for really like bringing economy forward and thus creating jobs.
Great. Let's talk about this cultural exchange education-wise. You do have German school here, right? What's its role in cultural exchange specifically?
The German school, as I said, 70 years old, has been a backbone of our bilateral cooperation, a backbone of mutual understanding, and has produced, if I may say so, so many bridge builders between our two countries. So I think this is very important. But it's much more, you know, we have the Goethe Institute, for example, our cultural institute. And in this Goethe Institute, so many cohorts, hundreds, thousands of Ethiopians have studied the German language, but also got in touch with German culture. So I think this is as well very important. And then we have the academic exchange service. So stipend system for Ethiopians, of course not exclusively for Ethiopians, but for promising academics around the world to come to Germany to study there. And I do see, and this is perhaps my last point here, I do see many Ethiopians going on their own to study in Germany and they're coming back, many of them coming back and bringing their education back home and perhaps some new ideas which might be fruitful here in Addis.
Among the pressing issue, one is the Ethiopia's quest to access to the sea nowadays. How do you view it?
I'm hesitating because you were saying nowadays pressing issues. Well, I have a very clear opinion to this. You know, my container left Germany, where we do have ports, not through a German port, but through a Belgian port. And this is very easy and has no problems, and there is no need for a German container to go through a German port on a ship, which again has a different flag, I don't know, Panama or whatever this might be. So in this context, I'm advocating for a diversification of access. I hear the argument of 130 million people, growing economy, and it's all very correct. For me, it is in this context very important, and I see the attempts of the Ethiopian governments in this regard for an economic diversification. And there are so many ports around. So as far as I understand, almost all or vast majority today go through the port of Djibouti, but there are many other ports as you were referring to, on the Horn of Africa, which can be used, economically viable freight forwarders, as far as I understand, could manage this as well.
Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing economy again. Are you seeing such indicators that maybe from the government side, other commentators and economists, financial analysts always say Ethiopia is on a good track? Have you witnessed that?
I do see this impressive figure. It is really impressive, also in comparison with my own country. So I don't know the latest one, but perhaps it grows like 7% of GDP or 8 or whatever. So this, let's say, around this figure, it's really very impressive. And I can imagine to some extent where this is coming from. We were talking about Addis and the change and all the construction going on. So there's huge contribution to growing GDP. We all know, for example, and I myself, I use it quite often, the flagship carrier of this country. So this is renowned all over Africa. and not only in Africa, but it's part of Star Alliance, so part of the Lufthansa Star Alliance consortium. And I do see and understand all these opportunities. Even in these 2 years, I saw a lot of changes with so many, for example, new cars coming in, right? So 2 years back, you could hardly see an electric engine vehicle in the city. Now it's so many e-vehicles here in Addis Ababa. And this creates a lot of even more opportunities also for business, right? So for the workshop on electric vehicles, for of course the import, for the infrastructure, for loading. So there's a lot coming up with it. And let me touch here on a different note. You were asking about our development cooperation. And in fact, here again, you know, we put a lot of emphasis on the TVET sector because we think it's very important. You were talking about youth, so bring them into a really qualified training. And I do see that also in this sphere, I was just picking one example of electric vehicles. It is important that the education, the training of the mechanics lives up to this new standard of new vehicles on the roads.
We've mentioned different projects, initiatives, and other stuffs as well. Before you leave, let me ask you about the Green Legacy Initiative of Ethiopia. Some say it's bearing fruit. How do you see it again?
I think you can take this very literally, bearing fruit, because many of these trees are fruit trees. So you have like many avocado, mango, whatever trees. So it is really like bearing fruit. I do believe that planting trees, and I myself have with my own hands have planted hundreds of trees, it is something very, very reasonable and very, very important. And what I hear, for example, is that let's say the timber industry in this country has a huge potential. Why? Because the growth here in Ethiopia under the given weather conditions, with so much rain, at least here in the highlands and in vast parts of the country, is so fertile in the end that within half the years it would take in Germany, for example, you can harvest trees here. So this gives, again, a great opportunity for increasing a very sound, sustainable, and this is very correct here, this definition of sustainable when we talk about forestry, sustainable business cluster, if I may say so. So it is important to plan, and this is why, and I think this green legacy creates a lot of general acceptance and general commitment by the whole society to contribute to this endeavor for greening Ethiopia again. And I think the second step to this, because I come from that, let's say, view of also using the forest. So in 10 and 20 years' time, how to make use of all these plants, all of the trees, beside the fruits we've been talking about, to make it useful for timber production, make it useful for construction purposes, and to create another business cluster where so many people, again, will find jobs.
Thank you for your precious time.
You're most welcome. Welcome to the...
Dear viewers, thank you for watching. This brings you the end of our edition for today. Bye-bye. Take care. Have a good one.